as the clown Merovingian kings. And so people begin to talk about maybe we need a new king, maybe Charles Martel. Charles Martel doesn't become king, but his son will. His son's name is Pepin the Short, and he will perform the coup d'etat to get rid of the Merovingian kings. He will take away his king and become king himself. This is a coup d'etat. I like to throw a little French at my college students, and so you have to actually know what this means. A coup is a strike, and an état is a state, a strike of the state, a seizure of the state, a grab of the state, a takeover. One king is gone, and there's a new man who's the king, a coup d'etat. So now we refer to it as a coup against the king, not a coup, but a coup replacing one king with another. So the old Merovingian kings are put aside, and you have a new royal family, a new royal family. King Pepin the Short is the new king of France from 751 with his coup d'etat, and he'll rule for 17 years or more, so it's a nice reign there. Something interesting happens, though, in this coup d'etat when you have a system based on oaths of loyalty and Christian oaths. Is it okay to attack your superior and replace them? Well, the Pope weighs in on this down in Rome. The Pope weighs in. He sends word that it's approved. King Pepin has the support of the Catholic Church to become the new king. They actually send the holy oil. France will be sent a container of holy oil to anoint Pepin the Short. So there's a papal representative that comes to France to anoint King Pepin. It actually takes place in the cathedral there, the church there in Rheims, up by Paris. That's the place where kings will be anointed for now on in French history with this holy container of oil. This is an interesting thing, though. These are the new line of kings, the Carolingian kings we call them. But there's a problem here. Who do you obey? You obey your king, obviously, right? But if there's word from the Pope now, maybe you obey the Pope because the Pope has okayed the king. So who has final say? This is actually a problem of authority now. Here as we enter the 700s, 800s, 900s, this is going to become more of a problem for kings of, I expect you to obey me, I'm the king. But then if word comes from the Pope, well, popes choose kings, right? You're not king unless the Pope says so. This is a problem of authority. Who do you obey, kings or popes? Well, you'd probably obey the king if he's right in front of you, but you might obey the Pope if the church says so. This is a problem. Let's talk about the Carolingian dynasty, starting there with Pepin the Short. Pepin has a son named Charles. Now again, that's Pepin the Short. His son Charles is a monster. 6'3", described with a gigantic belly and a massive neck and a monstrous warrior. Again, 6'3" might not be giant to an American today, but back then this would have been an absolute beast of a man. He's clearly the king, no doubt about that. What makes him unusual is its intelligence. The records indicate that this guy is not only a head basher, but he's extremely bright. Probably couldn't read or write, we don't think, but he liked knowledge. He liked the idea of intellectual pursuits. He would have books read to him. He wanted to talk to educated people. Again, this is the end of the Dark Age. This signals the end of the Dark Age when a king, a head basher, a warrior king, but he promotes knowledge. The light is coming back on in Europe. And again, I do want to remind you, he is a head basher. He is a Germanic warrior. He loves war. During his lifetime, he'll wage 54 military campaigns and conquering all over Europe. He is Charles the Great. This is Charlemagne, Charles the Great. I want to talk about his battles real quick. He will battle everywhere. He'll be battling in Italy against the Lombards, and he will defeat them and claim their crown. He will crown himself king of the Franks and king of the Lombards. He will fight the Basques. He'll be down in Spain, up into northern Spain, fighting against the Basques. These were an ancient Celtic people fighting in the mountains there. That's notable because there was a famous song of Roland written about this time, a ancient, kind of middle-aged song of one of his warriors named Roland, a great noble man fighting to support his king. And so this is important. It's the age of song now and the age of chivalry here. He'll fight across the Rhine. He'll be fighting against the Bavarians and settling them down around Munich. 787, he defeats the Bavarians. The Slavs are coming in. The 800s are a time when there's a new wave of immigration. These are the Slavic people, and he'll be fighting to to keep them in the east of Europe. He'll fight people called Avars. There's a record of the Avar people, and he will completely eliminate them. They will be wiped off the map. Every man, woman, child of the Avars are killed. Again, this is a Dark Age time also of genocide warfare. This is a picture here of the Song of Roland. There are the words up there of the song, and here's Roland dying to save the army. At the very end of the song, he gives his life to save the army. Charlemagne also fighting against the Saxons. This is a Germanic tribe. We talked about the Saxons before, some of them landing over in England, the Anglo-Saxon England people. Some of them stayed in Europe, and so he'll be fighting against the Saxons east of the Rhine. These were tough people. He waged war for 32 years against the Saxons, described in the Carolingian records as a fierce people, devil worshippers, satanic, non-Christian people coming in. They violate all laws of man and God. So this is, again, Dark Age Europe here, these Saxons. And he finally defeats them. He finally defeats them in the year 804, brings them down, and he doesn't kill all of them, but he will offer them a conversion. Some of them will be killed, but many of them will be converted. Actually, the record describes them as forcibly baptized and allowed to survive. The Saxons will settle down and become a German Christian tribe after that. But again, I just like to remind you how this is still kind of a dark age, although the light's starting to come on a little bit. Here's a map of his conquest. Down here against the Lombards, over here against the Basques, over here against the Bavarians. The Avars were over here, and the Saxons up there. So he is carving, the German migration went this way, and now he's carving back that way. He's conquering Europe back against the Germans as these Slavs come in, Slavs and Slavs. So we're kind of carving out Europe here. He's reclaiming Europe. We've got potentially a Roman emperor here, maybe. One of the things that his armies have that make them superior is his armies have grasped a new invention. In the 700s, Europe, coming all the way from China, is an thing called a stirrup. It's unbelievable that people have been riding horses, Greeks and Romans and such, without a stirrup, without a place to put your feet as you ride this horse. It's unbelievable. But in the 700s now, we have records that this has come to Europe, a place to plant your feet while you fight. And what this does to combat is makes the horse the superior weapon here. You can run over a foot soldier now easily, because on this horse you can wear armor with a big, huge spear. And here they are wearing armor on horseback with a giant sword and a giant spear. Cavalry now becomes the element. And these Europeans, the Franks and the Europeans, will start growing huge horses now. Now that you can plant your feet on this horse, you don't want a tiny horse. You want a giant horse that can just run over people. This is the age of the war horse and the age of knights now in the 700s, 800s, 900s, and on. The horse is the weapon. Charles the Great, as he's carving out Europe from the area of the Franks, now taking all of northern Europe, the Italy, all the way to the German states. Charles the Great. In Latin, the church will announce that this is Carolus Magnus, Charles the Great, which in French, kind of a combination of German and Latin. In French now will be Charlemagne. Not Carolus Magnus, as the church calls him, but Charlemagne. He's also a great statesman, by the way. There are other records of him besides with the Frankish records. There are records of him in Constantinople. His ambassadors have been sent to Constantinople. He contacted the Byzantine empires, actually talking about, let's get the Roman Empire back together. And the response of the Byzantines over in Constantinople is, we're good, we're fine over here. Thank you for liberating Western Europe, and that's fine, you just stay over there. Again, Western Europe's in a dark age. The Byzantine Empire is still okay, relatively speaking. In other words, they don't want Charlemagne getting too close to them. There's records of them sending him an elephant as a gift at one point. He sets up a new capital. His capital city will be closer to the Rhine, the city of Aachen, just west of the Rhine. So he's moving back over closer to the Rhine now, so kind of in the center of his holdings. The city of Aachen, the French will refer to it as Aix-la-Chapelle. So the Germans will call it Aachen, and the French will refer to it as Aix-la-Chapelle. He will call it his new Rome. He is establishing a new Roman Empire in his mind. This building is still there today in the city of Aachen. Part of his building is still there. It's in a Byzantine style. He actually had Byzantine architects come over and design this for him. So in the middle of Germany, there is this Byzantine-looking, Asian-looking palace. And just as a side note here, one more thing he does besides this beautiful palace is he will actually build a bridge over the Rhine. Again, that's a symbol that the Dark Ages are over, when these people are able to build bridges, because not much has been built up to this time. Everything's just been in decay. He has a bridge now over the Rhine, something the Romans would have wanted to do, build a bridge, and the Rhine's a huge river. So that's a sign that by 800, we're out of the Dark Ages here. Here's his empire, pushing down into Spain, northern Italy, Bavaria, all the way up to Saxony. That's the heart of Western Europe is his. Here's a representation of his palace at Aachen. Nice palace in the 800s. This part is gone today. This part isn't there. The only part left is this octagonal building over there. The round domed part is still there today. And inside the building, there is Asian-looking tile. Everything's tiled as if you're in the Middle East. You can see all the archways, or Asian-looking arches. And then in the back room, he's buried. His sarcophagus is still there, and so we know, actually looking at his bones, he was 6'3" and a massive individual. So he's buried inside this this thing here. What a fantastic building. 800, pretty much we can say, is the end of the Dark Ages. By 800, there's still some war and terrible things going on, but thanks to Charlemagne, by 800, we can say Europe is out of the Dark Ages. He actually is coronated. The Pope will coronate him as a new Roman emperor. So 800 marks the possible rebirth of a Roman Empire. One more thing about Charlemagne, he does support the church very well, and he will help found monasteries. There'll be a great age for monasteries all over Europe now, and that's pretty much a education system. All young men of talent will be brought to these monasteries and become educated. He liked this. He liked the idea of education, educating men and providing governmental officials. One of the problems, though, that comes up with this is you would think, well, that's great. This will be a new age of intellectualism. One of the problems is that his warrior nobles, once they start recognizing that, hey, a church office is really, really important, they'll start wanting to put their sons in. And some of their sons aren't very well educated, but because they're a powerful noble, they'll take church offices. So nobles will put their sons in and their nephews into these church offices, so that you have a church which runs the government, but these churchmen may not be exactly caring about religion so much. And again, also family loyalty. You'll have a churchman and you'll have a noble who runs the territory kind of working together because they're in the same family. People using their church positions, and the church becomes really powerful here. Everyone has to pay money to the church, the tithe, and so lots of money in these church positions, lots of power as church and state are combined into one functioning organism. And then he dies. He dies in 814, 14 years after his great coronation, the death of Charlemagne, and power passes to his son. He has a son, Louis the Pious, he is known. You can look at his name and tell he may not be one of the great ones. Louis the Pious, no. Not known in the history books as a great man. In fact, he'll spend most of his time praying, and he dies in 840. And even before his death, there was a civil war among his sons, getting ready for their father Louis the Pious to die. So you've got a civil war now that breaks out in 1840 for real among his three sons. And by 843, they come up with a treaty, the Treaty of Verdun, splitting up Charlemagne's empire. The oldest of Charlemagne's grandsons, the sons of Louis the Pious, the oldest of the grandsons, it gets first pick, and he will take the central part of his grandfather's kingdom, or empire. He will take the central part along the Rhine River all the way through the Alps and into Italy. It's a nice piece. Nice. That's the kind of the heart of Italy, the heart of Europe there. So he will claim that part and claim the title of emperor. His next brother, next youngest, will take the title of Louis the German, as he claims the eastern side, the old German states there. And then the third brother, Charles the Bald, will take the western side It used to be the old Frankish kingdom. And so you have Europe split into three pieces. The Frankish side, the German side, and the central side. And as soon as they sign the treaty, they pretty much go to war. And this brother pretty much squeeze the third brother out. The brother who got first pick gets squeezed out of the middle, and you'll end up with Europe pretty much split into 1, 2, 3 pieces here, and then a buffer zone in the middle. Not good timing, by the way. The 800s is also the age of the Vikings. So as Europe is tearing itself up, Charlemagne had united everyone, and then his grandsons tear it up again as the Viking raiders come pouring all over Europe.